we've received no formal or even informal notification of anything. Kim Jong Un had said previously that he understands the need and the utility of the United States and the Republic of Korea continuing in its joint exercises. They're exercises that are legal. They're planned well in advance.
They're negotiating over leverage and things they want to have on the table. Now, our diplomats are getting some insight into where North Korea is really heading.
I think not doing military exercises would actually be a show of good faith on our part. Doesn't change anything permanently, but delaying that until after talks, I think, would be a good idea.
Well, reaction to the announcement from North Korea today that they have a problem with the U.S. and South Korea doing joint military exercises, so much of a problem that they may cancel the upcoming summit, June 12th, between President Trump and Kim Jong Un. The North Korean statement saying this exercise targeting us, which is being carried out across South Korea, and targeting us is a flagrant challenge to the Panmunjom Declaration and an international military provocation running counter to the positive political development on the Korean Peninsula. The United States will also have to undertake careful deliberations about the fate of the planned North Korea-U.S. summit in light of this provocative military ruckus jointly conducted with the South Korean authorities. So what about this ruckus and where this leads, and what is it? Let's bring in our panel. Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano, Philip Bump, politics reporter for The Washington Post, and Steve Hilton, former advisor to British Prime Minister David Cameron and host of The Next Revolution here on Fox News Channel. Steve, it seems like posturing. Is this thing falling apart, do we think?
I don't think it's falling apart. I think that it's perfectly possible this is part of the choreography. Remember that just as what President Trump is doing is seen here as a big risk, it's also likely that back in North Korea, what Kim is doing is seen as a risk, and he may have people and factions there that he needs to placate to show that he's not caving in, and so on. And there's this delicate dance that has to be done to get to that summit. I think that the response from President Trump is going to be crucial. He wants this really badly. I think he's going to do everything to herd the cats in the right way to get to that summit.
But you know, Phil, go ahead.
It's going to be very important to see his response. I think that matters much more than anything we hear from our diplomats.
But you heard Rand Paul, Phil, say that maybe it's not so bad that we stopped the joint military exercises. People at the Pentagon's heads would explode about that because they've been doing that for a long time. They think it's crucial to the region to continue to do it.
Well, I mean, it certainly is. Looking several years down the line, I think everyone would like to see a scenario in which such exercises are less necessary, and that's sort of what we've been working toward. But I think that the point that was just made is a critical point, which is that President Trump has sort of gone against his art of the deal mentality and put all his cards on the table, and his cards are, I very much want this thing to happen. And I think North Korea recognizes to some extent that gives them leverage over President Trump and over the United States in this moment to try and twist some arms, and because knowing that Donald Trump, I mean, President Trump has not directly said, I hope to win the Nobel Peace Prize, but he certainly has hinted that he assumes there will be some recognition for this. That gives the North Koreans some leverage. And I think it's also interesting to note, Joshua Pollack from the Middlebury Institute has pointed out that North Korea is also a little incensed at the way in which the United States has sort of assumed ownership over the developments on the North Korean Peninsula, or on the Korean Peninsula. This may be also to some extent a reaction to that.
Listen to Martha McSally on this development, Judge.
It could be just some posturing and trying to show strength coming up to the summit. But we have also seen in the past, 1992 and 2000 and 2007, where they had a lot of nice words about moving towards more of a peace, and then it really ended up being nothing, and they backtracked to their normal oppressive, belligerent regime. But the hard work's in front of us.
Basically, looking at North Korea's past, they haven't been great about keeping up with their promises.
No, not at all. Congresswoman McSally was here. She and I were talking about this when this news broke earlier today. I don't want to sound like an echo chamber. I agree with both of my colleagues here, and I agree with her. But I wonder if our diplomats ought to have known that this was coming. I mean, certainly Kim knew that these exercises were going to take place. Rand Paul is my dear friend, but you're right. The military's heads would explode. It's too late to stop this thing now. The cost of stopping it in human energy and in treasure would be far too much, and the implication in stopping it would be so contrary to everything Donald Trump stands for,
which is essentially strength.
Correct. So either we did didn't know this was coming and we poorly prepared, or this is the way they are. And as Steve says, he has to appeal to his base. It's not a nationwide base. It's a very small base of the leadership of the Communist Party that assures that he stays in power.
In the background of this, you have this decision on ZTE, this Chinese company, and kind of a walk back of what were going to be sanctions against this. I saw on Twitter today someone speculating that, maybe Kim looked at that and said, well, I want a piece of that. Maybe I should ask for something, too, if they're walking back other things.
I think that's one way of looking at it. I think that the sophistication of the different players here is something we can't be certain about. I think the Chinese definitely feel that, as you were saying, because the president wants this so badly, they've got some leverage there. But,
and in that case, it's the Chinese deal with trade. I mean, figuring that
That's
out.
right. But I think that that's one deal. It's a very important one, and I was concerned about the walking back. But actually, if you look at the increased scrutiny that CFIUS is giving to deals right across the spectrum, not just this big one, but all throughout the range of technology deals with the Chinese, I think that overall the stance towards China is way tougher than it was before, and I think that needs to continue. But to get this delicate process on, keep it on the road, you may need to give the odd concession here and there.
Wouldn't the president know what Kim is going to say before they actually meet in Singapore?
Well, that's why Pompeo was out there, right? I mean, this is a lot of spinning plates for the new Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo.
Right.
We'll see what happens.